Welcome, Ayubowan. So in this lesson, we are going to cover speaking parts 1, 2 and 3 in the advanced level around the topics museum and exhibitions, right? Let's have a look at a typical part 1 question. You'll have a few more questions around this topic. Are there many museums in your hometown? In my hometown, no, there are none. But I know just a little further away from my hometown in Colombo, there is one museum. Yes, there are many museums in my hometown. I don't know all the names, but I can name a few. They are the Indian Museum, Victoria Memorial, and Kolkata Museum. Right? So if you know the names, you can. But if it's like an answer like mine, I don't, then I would give an answer which is a negative answer. Do you think museums are useful for visitors to your hometown? Well, if there was a museum, I definitely think it is useful because it tells a lot about the hometown and lots of people coming to see it. So it would be an extra income for certain shops in my hometown. So I think it is useful. Yes, museums are useful for visitors because it tells a lot about the history of the hometown. It might not be important for everyone, but there is nothing wrong in knowing how a city evolved to the present age. I think it is useful. Do you often visit a museum? Not really. I'm not the kind of person who is interested a lot in history, so I rarely visit a museum. No, I don't visit museums often. I'm not a history buff, but I have been to places I mentioned earlier on the occasion of school educational tours. Right. Did you go to any museums when you were a child? Yes. I've been to the museum which is there in Colombo, and I've visited the place about, say, 2-3 times. I've gone there once with my parents, and then we went on an educational tour which was taken by our school. So I've been there a few times. Yes, when I was a kid, I used to. Nice one, used to. So actually you pronounce it like used to, right? I used to be very curious about everything and anything. Thus, I used to visit a lot of museums and historical monuments holding my parents' hands. I used to get awestruck by the huge monuments and wonder how big they are, okay? So speaking part 2, describe an exhibition that you visited. You should say when you saw this exhibition, where the exhibition was held, what was on display, and explain your impression of the exhibition, right? So you can talk about an art exhibition which was held in the art gallery, what was on display, new artists' pictures or portraits or arts were there and they were displayed. Your impression, you could say you were quite impressed about it, right? About how skilled they were and the colors that they had used, the creativity, the themes. You could talk about those, right? So I'd like you to think about it and now start getting used to talking about these things on your own. So remember, you will have 1 minute to prepare and you will have to speak 1 to 2 minutes, right? Let's have a look at a sample answer. When I was a little girl, I went to a museum near my home that was exhibiting life-size wax sculptures. It was in a large room in the museum. The wax figures showed people from different occupations and different poses. Poses means how they stand. Each looked so real that it almost seemed as if a person was actually standing there and staying perfectly still. Right? Still means ekama vidiyata. For the first half hour, when I was in the room, I was sure that one of the figures would begin to move and that I would finally prove that they were really just people. The skill of the sculptor was amazing in how each one was perfectly made to exhibit human body's texture, posture, and size. I was especially amazed at the wax figure of the cowboy. It seemed that he came right out of an old Western movie with his cowboy pants, gun, and spurred boots. There was also the figure of a woman at a bench with a swimsuit, towel, sunglasses, and surfboard. There was a policeman, his hand held out to stop traffic with a whistle in his mouth. There was a mechanic with his hand resting on the hood of a car that he had just fixed, and the illusion of grease smudges all over his hands, face, and clothes. Amazing, right? As a young girl, I was amazed at how someone could make a statue look so real. Brilliant answer, lot of explanation given, used lot of language, and I think this is a good answer. So there's another sample. Often attending art exhibitions is one of the best ways to get familiar with the meaning of life. Generally, art depicts a lot of meaning and methods. Lately, I attended an art exhibition organized in my city. So I would like to talk about it. The exhibition was held in the community hall of my city, and my friends accompanied me. For visitors, there was a small entry fee. We were more than happy to pay for it. The moment we stepped inside the hall, we were awestruck by the variety of art. Awestruck means, oh, wow, like that, right? By the variety of art forms that were on display. The first section was dedicated to paintings. Intriguing paintings in varying sizes and from different artists were displayed there. There was also an option to buy any of them if we wanted. In fact, a variety of paintings were auctioned too. In the next section, pottery art was displayed. Along with that, there was a live workshop where artists were showcasing how pots were made. If anybody was interested, they could also give a hand to the potter to make the pots. Going forward, we came across other forms of art, such as jewelry, carved stones, handicrafts, and more. My overall experience of this art exhibition was satisfactory. I was impressed and astonished at the same time by how much talent our artisans have and the fact that most of the people are not even wary of it. They don't even know about how artistic, creative that they are. Again, use of good language, vocabulary, and sentence patterns, right? The entire exhibition was organized pretty well. Every visitor had nothing but appreciative words for the management and respect for the artisans. So the final concluding part of the answer. So we're moving into part 3. Does China have many museums? What kinds? If you were Sri Lankan, they would ask you, does Sri Lanka have many museums? Well, I think in Sri Lanka we don't have many museums. We do have a few. We've got the museum which is there in Colombo. Then we've got the Martin Wickramasinghe Museum, which is known in Sinhala as Martin Wickramasinghe Kautukagare, right? So we've got a few museums. I'm not a great fan of history, so I don't know much, but I know that those two are definitely there. Yes, there are many. In the places that I've been, most of the museums are about dinosaurs or stars. There are also some marine bird and insect museums. Oh yeah, in Galle, I forgot, there's a marine museum. Was it in Galle? Yeah. Often there's a little bit of all of them mixed into one museum, right? Are museums popular in Sri Lanka? Not so popular, I would say. Not many of us are into museums, but if you take the British, I think they're quite into museums. And if you've not done it, please go through it. The intermediate lessons around museums, exhibitions, right, and graffiti. There are some lovely listening and reading lessons. So please go through it to improve on your vocabulary. They're mostly for children or students. Sometimes you will see a whole family go to a museum or perhaps a young couple, but it's quite rare. Sometimes grandparents would take their grandchildren there as well. Do you think people should have to pay to visit museums? I think it is a good idea because anything given free of charge, we have the free rider problem and people don't really pay attention to it. So I think charging at least a subsidized amount would be really useful. One thing is it's important for the maintenance of the museum, so that income would help them. On the other hand, the people visiting the museum would also be more careful to take care of the things, and they have a bit of more value than just giving them a free entry. So, a different view. I think it's not a good idea for people to have to pay all the time. I think it's a good idea for part or most of the museums to be free. But if people want to see certain parts or participate in special things, then they have to pay. If people have to pay each time they go, and especially if it's expensive, then many won't go or won't go very often. The reason why I think this is bad is that I think it's very educational to be able to look and learn from all the things in the museum. So this is a different view. How will museums change in the future? Now this is a nice one because students tend to get stuck and they think, oh, how are we going to talk about change in the future, especially to a museum, right? I think that museums will become more modernized and more accurate. I think that they will have better and more interesting exhibits. The way they are set up and advertised, I think it will also improve so that they are more appealing to the general public. I think they will also have more interesting themes displayed and exhibited. And what I think is that we could start giving them like a virtual tour as well in terms of museums. So if people want to join virtually, they could get a virtual tour without actually having to come to see it physically as well, in case, right? And then obviously have guided tours around the museum without just going and saying, oh, this is this, oh, this is this, oh, this is this, right? It would be nice to have some guided tours and explain more in terms of history and give them more detailed information. All right. Do schools in Sri Lanka have art classes? Well, yes, we do. In Sri Lanka, lots of places do have art classes and it's a part of their curriculum. And in some art museums or exhibition centers, they even have free art sessions. So in terms of China, no, not really. Sometimes they do, but most of the time, if the students or their parents want children to study art, they must go to special art classes. Or the schools have art classes, but they aren't a part of the curriculum. And parents must pay extra to have their children attend these classes. More often than not, children in China don't take art classes and a few children develop an interest in it. Okay? Should arts education be part of the school curriculum? Yes, I think it should be a part. I think art is very important and it's an important subject because it not only encourages self-expression, but also is a creative art and helps to develop artistic creativity in many areas of life, not just art. Also, children who feel they are accomplished and are able to do something more than study do better in other classes and subjects because they have higher self-esteem. Children who don't know how to do anything other than their basic subjects will feel inferior to their peers and will not perform as well in class as they could. Right? This is just a view for you to think about. How do you think art classes affect child development? I think it would affect in a positive way because art classes give them a time to express what they feel and it leads them to being more creative and more happy, right? So if they find it difficult to express something, art is a good mode for them to express their feelings, how they feel. That was a repetitive part. Their feelings and how they think about certain things. So I think it's a good form of expressing your thoughts. They help to develop a child's creativity and curiosity. They help a child to express himself through the things he draws, notice the things around him, and learn from them. Art also encourages an admiration for nature and living things. So, children who have been taught to appreciate art are less likely to do things that are harmful to the environment, to others, or to themselves. All right? What kind of paintings do Chinese people like? That's a little hard to answer. I think that Chinese paintings are very popular in China. Most people here in China like paintings in the Chinese style of paintings of familiar scenes here. There are also quite a few abstract and realistic paintings and styles that are popular with certain groups of people. Okay, so if you talk about Sri Lankan people, I think what kind of paintings do Sri Lankan people like? I think they like paintings in the terms of crayons, right? Watercolor paintings, and they like actually realistic and abstract painting types too. Most Sri Lankan people like to paint portraits and they like to paint sceneries. So that's what I think. Some paintings are very expensive, but people still want to buy them. Why do you think they do so? Now, this could be for different reasons, right? So people want to buy expensive paintings to show their level of esteem, sometimes their social status, right? Sometimes, naturally, people have a liking towards paintings and they want to have a collection. So then they buy expensive paintings. I think that most of the time, they want to have a very expensive painting so they can show it off to their friends. Or maybe they feel like it makes them look more in style or more fashionable to have expensive paintings by famous people. Some people collect paintings or works of art so they will get anything they think will look nice with their collections. All right. And coming to the last question, what benefits can you get from painting as a hobby? I think there are many benefits. For one, it can be very relaxing to paint, especially if you're outside in nature. Also, it can help you to take your mind off any problem or stress that you might have from your work. It will also improve your creativity and help you think better. All right? So I think we've had a look at some good questions in terms of museums and exhibitions. If you're not familiar, please go to the intermediate level, and we've done museums, exhibitions, graffiti, we've done vocab around it, we've done reading, some good listening as well. So if you have a look at those lessons, that will give you a good insight to answering these questions better. Okay, and if you're getting stuck, you can't answer, fluency is not there, that means you can't express, you don't have enough vocabulary, okay? So I think with that, we have come to the end of the lesson, which was an advanced level speaking lesson, focusing on part 1, 2, and 3 around museums and exhibitions.